We're learning the Maamar Shalom Rav Tafshin Lamed Ches. It's our second Shiur. We're holding now Sif Ches. The Rebbe's Maamar that we're learning is Miyusla on the Maamar Shalom Rav from Tafshin Daleth from the Friedrich Rebbe. The Friedrich Rebbe in the beginning of his Maamar asks two questions on the pasuk Shalom Rav Le'evesirasecha, which are, number one, why does the pasuk say Shalom Rav, talking about a greater type of peace, which implies there's a lower type of peace, and here we're talking about a higher type of peace. Secondly, why does it say Le'evesirasecha and not seemingly a more appropriate expression Lo'im Vesirasecha? The relationship you typically have with an intellectual idea is an academic relationship. You learn the Torah. And the Friedrich Rebbe essentially answers one question with the other. Oya v'serasecha are not your classic learn de Torah. They're not your classic people who learn Torah. They're people who are looking for the cha, Torah secha, the Eibishter in the Torah. And therefore the relationship between them and the Eibishter is oyhaveh. It's a love to the Torah, not on account of Torah itself, but on account of the Eibishter present in the Torah. That's a special ava that needs bittul, which comes through the Hagdama of Avodas HaTfilah. And because they're such people, oya v'serasecha, therefore they get Shalom Rav. The Rebbe in the Maamar comes to explain what's the muhus of this Shalom Rav, and how exactly, or what exactly is this level of oya v'serasecha. So first the Rebbe goes classically, explaining it based on the classic idea of azva mesterasi baruch hu b'Torah tchila. That b'chlal you have Torah the way it is on its own, where the Eibishter is behelim, and then when a person learns Torah, and oifen of baruch hu b'Torah tchila, bringing a hamshacha into Torah, you bring their mamshech eid and saf into Torah. That hamshacha of Gilead and Saf requires bittul. That's the bittul that Friedrich Rebbe was talking about. That's where Avodas HaTfilah is required as a hakdama, and that's the oya v'serasecha. On the first level, in the beginning of the Maamar, that's the oya v'serasecha. People that have tefillah, which creates ava to Torah mitzad the Eibishter, and they're the ones that are able to do this avodah baruch hu b'Torah tchila to bring a hamshacha of and Saf into Torah. To appreciate more what exactly is a Shalom Rav that's coming to the oya v'serasecha, the Rebbe juxtaposes this pasuk against the pasuk that comes before it in the Maamar Chazal, Amar Rabbi Elazar Rabbi Chanina, which we say every day in davening, and the Venkel Ekeinu. The pasuk right before it says, "V'chol b'nayich limudi Hashem v'rav shleim b'nayich," also a lashon of v'rav shleim, which would imply that already the b'nayich limudi Hashem in the previous pasuk have the inyan of the higher level of peace. So what's the maila of oya v'serasecha, that they have a special Shalom Rav over the Rav Shleim that goes to b'nayich already? And the main vart that the Rebbe said is that there's two areas where this Shalom Rav, or this greater peace, is being nimshach. V'chol b'nayich limudi Hashem is speaking about how Tamid Chachamim are marbim Shalom ba'olam. They're bringing a higher level of peace, a higher oyer, to the world. Shalom Rav le'eveserasecha is talking about how that Shalom Rav is nimshach then to the Talmid Chachamim themselves. So in the last year we spent the Arichos talking about the first prat, the union of Rav Shleim B'Noich, how the Talmid Chachamim are being mar b'Shalom b'Olam, and the Rebbe goes through kama v'kama dargas. You have Michal, the way the world was created, Ilam Amilui Nivra, and the Tachlis is to get a higher Gilear that came on the lowest level through the Avos. They were a Merkava, they brought a higher level of Eir, but it was such a Eir that was only Sheresh and Ivraim, because they were working on their own, they didn't have a Tzivoy, therefore they could only Mamshech Eir, that's as high as the Ivraim can reach. On a higher level, you have Adam Rishon, who had already a Me'ain, Bedugmas, the Rebbe's Lashon was, Bedugmas, the Avodah of after Matan Torah. But then you have the inyan of after Matan Torah. Taka, people that are learning Torah and doing mitzvahs after Matan Torah, and their Avodah is the V'rav Shleim B'Noich. Their Avodah is to bring, what the Rebbe calls Amshachas Ha'atzmos, essentially Direi B'Tachteinim, to bring that higher level, and not just a higher level of Eir, but Amshachas Ha'etzem, that's the Kavanah. That's the kavanah for the world. The kavanah for the world is to have Mshachas Ha'atzmos, and that's the V'rav Shleim B'Noich. Then, that Rav Shleim, or Shalom Rav as it's called in our pasuk, at the Chachamim or Mamshech into the world, needs to also, or is also nimshach into them themselves. And that's the shlav that we're up to right now in the Maamar, where the Rebbe is going to go and develop that from here until the end. And the way that Rebbe phrases it in the beginning of Sif Ches is that the reason that it's muchrach to say that the Shalom Rav is also nimshach li'oya v'serasecha, not just in Welt, but also to them themselves, is because of the klal. That's well known. Says the Rebbe, V'hini mikevon she'en HaKadosh Baruch Hu mekapeach schar kol beria. We have a rule that the Eibishter doesn't withhold schar from any creature. The marker for this is in the Mechilta, brought down in Rashi and Mishpatim, that the reason that we say like kelav tashlichu neisei when it comes to Atreifa is because as a reward for the fact that the dogs in Mitzrayim le'achratz kalav l'shoinei. And so from there we learn that the Eibishter doesn't withhold schar from any creature, even if it's a dog. It's kol sheken kal v'chemer when it comes to the avodah of Talmidei Chachamim over here. So the Rebbe says, Lachin, therefore, riboy hasholim shenase ba'olam al-yedei Talmidei Chachamim nimshach gam l'Talmidei Chachamim atzma. This riboy shalom which the Chachamim made, and the way they made it, the level on which they made it, is the level of after Matan Torah Amshachas Atzmos. That is also nimshach to the Talmidei Chachamim themselves. V'hainu, which means, what is it that's nimshach to the Talmidei Chachamim? Shanachas ruach lebeire mizeh shenasa le'yisbarach dira b'tachteinim. The pleasure that the Eibishter experiences from the fact that the dira b'tachteinim was made for him, because again, Rav Shloim Marvim Shalom Ba'ilam already is the dira b'tachteinim. It's already the highest Amshachas Atzmos. But when there's Amshachas Atzmos, the Eibishter has nachas ruach, and that pleasure that the Eibishter experiences is what goes Yisgale HaTalmidei Chachamim Shasu Es Hadira. It's going to be revealed to those Talmidei Chachamim who contributed towards making the dira, and that's a Sholom Rav Le'evis Rasecha, which the Rebbe says you should know. The Gilui of Nachas Ruach of the Beire is higher and greater than the Gilui that the Talmidei Chachamim or anybody would get as a reward in Elam Haba. Sha'aschar Elam Haba mitzad atzma yu bechinas Nachas Ruach dehanivra. The schar in Elam Haba, the Gilui likus that we're going to experience in Elam Haba, is Nachas Ruach the way it is framed in the limitations in the capacity of a nivra. Which of course is incomparable to the Nachas Ruach the way it's experienced by the Creator. Shalochein, which therefore parenthetically, we have the principle in Pirkei Avos that it's better to have 1 moment or 1 hour of tshuva ma'asim tovim in this world than all of Chai Elam Haba. The Chai Elam Haba is the greatest Gilui Likus. So what's pshat? So this is a classic Vart Nechshidus. Ki Elam Haba schar mitzvah nachas ruach da nivra. What you get in Elam Haba, the godly experience you have in the next world, that's your nachas ruach. Shebe'ein areich legabe nachas ruach da beire tshuva ma'asim tovim b'elam hazeh, which is be'ein areich to giving the Eibishter nachas ruach. Important how I translated that, because the Pashto Pshat in the Mishnah is not talking about an experience that you have. You don't have any experience. In this world, we don't have it. We do Tshuva Ma'asim Tovim. All we know is we're doing mitzvahs and giving the Eibishter Nachas Ruach. The point is, giving the Eibishter Nachas Ruach is be'ein areich greater than getting a personal, limited, nivra type Nachas Ruach. So what the Rebbe wants from that is that Elam Haba B'chlal is Nachas Ruach da Nivra. The Talmidei Chachamim are going to get to experience that Nachas Ruach da Beire. El Shekev and Shana Kadosh Baruch Hu Mekapeach Schar Kol Beria Yumshach LaTzadikim She'asu Es Nachas Ruach da Beire Gam Bechinas Nachas Ruach da Beire. They are going to get, to feel, to bask in the experience of Nachas Ruach da Beire. This is Sholom Rav. This is the Sholom Rav Le'evis Rasecha. In other words, erst over here we come to a definition of what it is that's being nimshach to the Eivus Rasecha. Azay we thought we're talking about a higher level of Limnat Torah, Eivus Rasecha versus Limnus Rasecha, and therefore they have a Sholom Rav. What is the Sholom Rav? A Sholom Rav is the experience of Nachas Ruach da Avodah that comes as the result of the Avodah of Rav Shloim Banoich of Marbim Shalom Ba'ilam. And now we can appreciate on a much deeper level why the Hagdama of Bittul is required. Till now we're just saying, if you want to have Eivus Rasecha, if you want to have an Ava to the Torah, you have to have Bittul. Why do you have to have Bittul? Because you're about to get Sholom Rav. In order for Talmidei Chachamim to be able to receive, to handle this Nachas Ruach, which is completely beyond their capacity. Know what we're talking about over here. We're talking about over here the Eibishter's essential pleasure within himself, where there is absolutely no room for definition. So this is something that's completely beyond and transcends any definition. And we're saying that the Talmidei Chachamim are going to get to experience it. So they can have no eye. The second there's an eye, the eye is a stira to experiencing the highest level of Tanug Atzmi. Like the famous 2 statements of Chazal that are often quoted when bringing out this union of Bittul B'Tachlis. Zayar says, Man Pnei Adin Avaya Darashbi. When the pasuk says that Yidden should come 3 times a year to see Pnei Adon Avaya, the face of the master of the Eibishter, who is the face of the master of the Eibishter? Dar Rashbi. It's Reb Shimon Bar Yochai. What's the pshat? He was saying he was being arrogant. No, Rashbi is the reflection of the Eibishter in this world. He was walking, talking, piece of Elikos. Nothing about him was bistira to a straight up Gilei Elikos. There's a whole Maamar on this, in Tafshin Yud Zayin, a very fascinating Maamar in a few places that I've been signed over here to earlier Maamar from earlier Rabbi, but there's a Maamar from the Rebbe that explains this same concept. I'll the same. The next Maamar Chazal. V'avaya be'echal kachel, the Yerushalmi says, what is the Eibishter sitting in his palace? Dor Rabbi Yehuda Rabbi Lazar or Be'esav Rabbi Lazar b'knishta midrasha d'keser. This Amayra, when he was sitting in the great Beis Medrash of Caesarea, that was the Eibishter in the Hechal Kachel. That's the pshat. He was the Eibishter. Yeah, because he was so bibitul that he was an expression of the Eibishter. Lashon Rebbe used it about the Fidik Rebbe. Yibis Tamas Tavshin Yud Aleph. Atmos Mahus Malubash and Guf. What does that mean? That means that the Guf was the Guf itself was a Klit Elikus. The Rebbe explains in many places, in many Maamarim. When the Rambam says about the difference between the Nevuah of Moshe Rabbeinu and the other Nevi'im, the other Nevi'im, Koichon Koshel, Gufon Mizdazin, Evrein Mizdazin, their bodies couldn't handle the Gilei Elikus. Moshe Rabbeinu Eimid al Amdei Sholom. When he was Mekabel Nevuah, he stood straight up. So the Rebbe says that means that the Guf was also a Klit Elikus. Elikus had him durchgenommen, through and through. There's an order from the Rebbe somewhere in Tashma Memches also about the Kohen Gadol, that the Gilei Elikus was niskabel in him. It kind of fused with him. It became who he was. And that's why it's passed to say on them, they are Pnei Adon Avaya, they are Avaya Bechal Kotche, because they are B'chinas Bittul B'tachlis. And when you are Bittul B'tachlis, Shal Yedei Zeh Michelu Mekabel Anachas Ruach V'Atainug Da'abeira. That allows you to become a vehicle, to become a conduit to receive the Nachas Ruach and Tainug of the Eibishter. Ki Atainug Da'abeira Atainug Shalem. Because when you're so batul, you become one Metzius with the Eibishter, and the Eibishter's Tainug is your Tainug. B'dugma Sa'evet. The classic example for this in Chassidus is the Evet, the slave, the real servant. Because he's not an identity unto himself. His whole identity is the identity of the Adain, like we see in Halacha, in our 81. Therefore the rule is, whatever the Evet is kaina, the master is immediately kaina. And not just immediately afterwards, but as the Rashba famously writes, the Eved picks it up. That's Hainu Ha'adain picking it up. Not saying he picks it up, and then, by virtue of his being the Eved, that goes to the master. That is the master picking it up. Milchatchila goes to the Rav. And so because the Eved is so batal, Tainug Adon, Tainug Eved. When the master experiences pleasure, that's the Eved experiencing pleasure as well. But that can only happen when your identities are fused, when you're battles to that extent. And that's why the bittul is required. In order to have Shalom Rav, you have to be Oya Be'ser Asecha. V'zeu Shalom Rav, Le'eh Be'ser Asecha, Le'eh Be'ser Asecha Dafka. That's why the pasuk says, Shalom Rav, who gets the greater type of peace? Only somebody who's Oya Be'ser Asecha. Ki HaKlila Shalom Rav, which we're defining in this Maamar as Nachas Ruach Da'abeira, who Bittul B'tachlis Kanal. The only Kli that can hold Shalom Rav is Bittul. Which is the idea of somebody who learns Torah in that way. They're not looking for a mavukash. They're not looking to get reward. All they're doing is out of Ava. As the Rambam writes, and the Rebbe has the famous Sikha, quotes it really in Chilik Chaf, but also later on in Chilik Lamed Gimel, Sikha and Shlach, fascinating beer in the entire Perek Yud in the Rambam and Nechus Tshuva. This idea that Avram serving Me'ava meant that there's no Mevukash. There's no Mevukash. What does he want from the relationship? The relationship. There's nothing that he's looking for. And that's pshat what the Maamar and Fidik Rebbe says, that comes through davening. You can only have when your Torah study comes as a result or after first prefacing the Avodah of davening. Ki tefillah when you're bittul, can also if dalad, as we explained, the whole tefillah leads to the Tfilas Hamida, which is the highest level of bittul, which can only be done standing, etc., etc. The lachena idea avodas hatfila bayim lebittul zeh she'ein shum mitzias la'atzmei v'chol mitziusei hu ha'adin, and therefore through the avodah of davening you can come to that bittul where you become mitzias-less. You don't have a mitzias, and your entire mitzias becomes the mitzias of the adin. And here the Rebbe spells out what I told you last year when we learned in the beginning of Sif Hey, in the end of Sif Hey, the difference between Rav Shloim Banoich and Shalom Rav Le'Avisirasecha. Why it doesn't say Le'Avisirasecha in the first pasuk, if l'chayra they are the same thing as Le'Avisirasecha. So I told you then, because the Rebbe is going to say that you don't have to have Avodas HaTfilah to have the Avodah of Rav Shloim in Welt. Here the Rebbe says it clearly. Which implies the idea of Avodas HaTfilah. When you're occupied with bringing Shalom into Welt, the builders, they build the world, they're bringing Eir Elyon Yoser. It's known but even without the Avodah of davening, even if you're missing a complete Yir Shemayim, you can still get to the proper halacha. You can still get to the proper true halacha in Torah without a full bittul. And when you reach the true element of Torah and you paskin based on that, and then you do based on that, that's it. The Hamshach of Rav Shloim Banoich is there. In other words, Klape Welt, it doesn't matter what the person was experiencing when he paskin the halacha. Klape Welt, we're looking for Hamshach of Shalom Ba'ilam. The Hamshach of Shalom Ba'ilam happens as long as the true Psak Din in Torah is reached. That true Psak Din penetrates the world and brings over there Rav Shloim. The person wasn't Oyeves Erasecha. The person wasn't fully ready for that type of a gilui, fine. But the Psak Din was emes, the Torah was emes, the Ma'aser was done al piteras emes. Mela the Rav Shloim goes into Welt. Avol b'chdei sheyumshach zeh atalmidei chachamim atzmam hinei zehu davka yideshin asur kelim mazeh. You want to get it yourself. You want to experience Shalom Rav. You have to be a keli for that. And the keli for that is Aydei Kdimas Avodas HaTfilah canal through first having the Avodas HaTfilah, which is a very big hira, in our own Avodah. Many times, and the Rebbe would say this constantly. People that are involved with influencing other people often ask themselves, how could I influence other people if I am not perfect myself? You can always find the Maamar Chazal, as Rabbi Heller is known to say. You can find the Maamar Chazal for everything. So when a person wants to justify the fact that he's not doing more in Harbatzas HaTorah, V'Hayadus, Fatzim Chutza, whatever your shlichus is, you find the reason to say, I'm not perfect. But here you see the Vart. For the Elikus to reach the Welt, it doesn't matter the status or the state of the person bringing Elikus to Welt. You're a vehicle. You do what you have to do. The effect will be had on the world on its level. You're not perfect. You may not experience it. Okay, granted. You want to experience it, you have to become a keli for it. But do the job. Be marbim shalom ba'ilam. Because the ilam needs it. And the ilam can get it, even without your full Yirah Shemayim. It's a Gavaldik lesson in Avodas Hashem. Now that the Rebbe has explained that the keli to Shalom Rav is to be Oyeves Erasecha, the Rebbe is going to go and peel the layers off of this bittul to truly expose the highest level of bittul which is required to get the gili of Shalom Rav. In other words, in this sif, you walk away, and the bittul which is required for Shalom Rav is a bittul of Evet. You're not a Metzias for Zich. Your whole Metzias is the Metzias Adit. But now the Rebbe wants to go further and say that no, it's the Avodah of Ben. The Yeshleim says the Rebbe Siftes. Sha'aklila hagilu denachas ruach labeire hu leira ka Avodah dibchinas Evet elagama Avodah dibchinas Ben. The keli to allow you to get the gili of nachas ruach the abeire is not just, and the Rebbe says leirak, not just the Avodah of Evet, but you have to also incorporate the inyan of Ben. And it makes sense. Our main identity, our primary identity as Neshamas Yisrael are children of the Eibishter. So it would make sense that to become a keli to the ultimate Gilui Elikus, we should have that part of our identity as part of it. which is very interesting. V'zeh she'apasuk Sholom Rav le'v'serasecha ba behemshech le'v'rav shloim b'noich. So till now we're talking about the two psukim one after another, Marbim Shalom Ba'ilam versus Shalom Rav to the Chum themselves. But look what it calls them in the first pasuk. Hainu she'u schar le'banoich. We're talking about a reward to people that are called banoich, sons. Ala v'dasam shemarbim Shalom Ba'ilam kanal sivches b'chinas banim. It's a reward to the banoich that are doing their aveda of Marbim Shalom Ba'ilam. They are acting as banim. It's true. We're not reading it banoich. The whole way we know we're talking about chachamim michal is because we're reading it as banoich. So maybe it's not the avodah of ben. But the Rebbe says, "Hariyadua haklal b'halimud al tikra she'enei shelol hapirush hanikra ela ma'asef ait pirush." Al tikra doesn't mean forget the original reading. It adds another pirush. The mizan move on. So therefore we can understand from this shahaschar the shalom rav shu anachas ruach the habeire kanal hu gam lebanoich kipshut b'chinas banim. Shalom Rav, Nachas Ruach Da'abeire, also comes down to Banoich, to those who are operating from a level of Banim. And the Rebbe actually proves this further in Hara 88 from the Lashon and the Fidik Rebbe's Maamar. Not the one that this is based on, B'chol Banoich Tafresh Peites, that was said by the Ufif, before the Rebbe's Chasana. Re'ei Seif Dibra Maschel, B'chol Banoich Tafresh Peites, Shal Yedei Ha'inyan Devrav Shloim Banoich, Al Tikri Banoich, Ela Banoich, Yekuyam Gam Bohem, but Talmidei Chachamim Atzmam V'Rav Shloim Banoich. Lashon Lefidik Rebbe. Through V'Rav Shloim Banoich, acting as Banoich, they themselves receive V'Rav Shloim Banoich. Mishkasu V'Rebanim Levanacha Shalom Al Yisrael. Your own Banim will see Banim. And the Lashon of the Fidik Rebbe is they're going to get V'Rav Shloim Banoich. The Mizesha Emer Sheyekuyam Bohem V'Rav Shloim Banoich. V'Ein Meisef Al Tikra Choli. In other words, the proof is that the banecha are going to have banim. That means that in the end of the day, ultimately we're talking about, in other words, ultimately the title of the people that are doing Rav Shloim is banoich. Through the avodah building the world, the shalom comes to those that are banoich, those that are b'chinas banim. And this requires explanation. How is Ben going to be part of the avodah of becoming a kli to receive Shalom Rav? And here the Rebbe turns to a piece of Torah, Parshas Vayeishev. The Maamar was said, Motzei Shabbos Vayeishev. Let's first take a look at a beer from the Alter Rebbe, who's the Balagula. We just came from Yitzis Kislev. And the Rebbe brings a L'hoyer Shagulasi Hoysabi and Gimel Parshas Vayeishev. In the original Geula, it was during the week of Parshas Vayeishev, so it's very appropriate that we're going to bring down a Maamar of the Alter Rebbe from Parshas Vayeishev. Dibra Maschel Vayeishev Yankiv Eretz Megurei Aviv. The Alter Rebbe explains over there, bringing a hefresh ben Torah and mitzvahs. What's the difference? Torah and mitzvah are both part of the avodah of Yid. You have to learn Torah to do mitzvahs. What's the difference? When we do mitzvahs, the highlighted element of our character is the character of being an evet. When you do mitzvahs, less of you is involved. There's much more submission than, let's say, intellectual understanding of significance. When you do mitzvahs, you're an evet. Like a servant who fulfills the commandment of the king and does what he says. Says the Alter Rebbe, when you learn Torah, you are the king. You are the king himself. Chazal, 91, Eved Melech Melech, servant of a king is the king. So already in the Darga of Eved we see a connection between the Eved and the Melech, and we'll get to that soon. But I'll call upon him, for the purposes of this Maamar, Eved and Melech are two separate things. When you're an Eved, you're a separate Metzias. When you're a Melech, when you learn Torah, you become the Melech himself. K'Maamar man malke Rabbanan, as the Gemara says, who is the king? Rabbis are the king. So the Pashup Shad of the Gemara is Ichlal. Who is truly a king is Rabbanan. But I think here it goes deeper. Man Malke, who is the king? Who is the Melech? Rabbanan. When you enter it properly, bebitul, as I was in dvarai beficha, dvarai mamish, I put my words in your mouth. In other words, your mouth speaks my words. The Eibshter's words, mamash, and Shadloya, Adam Muhammad Kim Shadvar, Vayazu Allah, he, Haniglis Bay, Biyam the Beresh Tichgrene. Nish the Menshret. When you speak the words of Torah, Dvar Vayazu Allah is being revealed through you, and it is what is speaking. That's why they're called kings. Who bebitul, because they learn Torah with a bitul that limud Allah shalem ubeifin sham melech atzmei melech malchem lachem kadosh baruch hu geyzer ve'emer as psak din halacha. When they speak, God speaks through them, because they become a conduit to the Eibishter. They have become the king. Mamshich sham, says Alter Rebbe weiter in the Maamar, shezel mashkasu Vayeishev Yankov beretz megurei aviv. That's the meaning of Yaakov dwelling, sitting, settling in the land of the living quarters of his father. Megurei lashon yira, v'gam lashon eitzer. The word megurei teaches the Alter Rebbe two teaching: fear and treasury. Kamei megurei malei peiris. Megurei means a storehouse full of produce. Shukli sha'eitzer l'seichei. Megurei is a keli into which you put stuff in, a storehouse. Agav, in our 95, the Rebbe brings this teaching of yira from earlier places also. In the Zayar, my megurei aviv k'modat amar magar misaviv. Fear is around. The kol yemei avadochil. Yaakov was always in a state of yiras shemayim. Uleharim balaturim ala pasuk megurei. He says beis b'maseira. There's only 2 times the word megurei appears in Tanakh. Hacha ve'idach megurei al cherev. Fears those who fear the sword. Pirshashi Yechezkel sham. On the pasuk megurei al cherev, tirgim yenusan megurei lashon eger bakayitz, gathering in. Mנחem chibur lashon yira kumev yagar mayav. So you see this two nekudas of yira and eitzer already in earlier pirushim and earlier psukim. The kol panim megurei is lashon yira lashon eitzer. Says the Alter Rebbe shneim eilim mekane echad mishkasu v'yiras havayeh hi eitzarei v'cheim edivir azal eitzer shal yiras shamayim. The pasuk puts both together. Yiras Hashem becomes the treasure of yiras shamayim. Which, by the way, says the Rebbe, upirir zeh kosver avamagid, ba'alai lulu diutis kislev, ve'er Torah. This is a pshat already written by the Magid. Shemegurei aviv v'yiras aviv shebashamayim. Ubehemshech inyan sham megurei lashon asifo knisa k'mei eiger bakayitz. The Magid brings down both pirushim, and we'll get to R99 in a second. But just first to R100, the Rebbe mentioned again, Ulehoyer sheis talkusei haisok megulas m'arzakin be'en gimel Parshas Vayeishev. He passed away the same kvias. Tuesday, Parshas Vayeishev, Le'ei Sichas Lil Chav Kislev, Tafreish Tarik Dal. That's the Buddha where the Rebbe just brings down the fact that they both passed away. Both the Magid's passing and Alter Rebbe's Gula happened on the same day, Gimel Parshas Vayeishev, and that the Chassidim used to say there was a vart. There was 26 years between the two. Keneged Shem Havaya. So, says the Alter Rebbe, Megurei means Yira, Megurei means Eitzar, Pirush Megurei Aviv Hu. So in context, the pasuk will then mean Sha'bitul de Yira, Bifrat Bitul de Yira Ilah, Hu Klikibul, Eitzar Lahagilu de Chachmei Ilah Nikras Aviv. Megurei becomes a Megurei for Aviv. Yira becomes the Kli for Aviv, for Chachmei Ilah. Ukanal, Dikshe'esak Ateiru Ubebitul, Azai V'asim Vara Beficha, Shadvar Avai Zo Alacha, Hiyam Navesh Techgreinai. That when you learn Torah b'bittul, the Eibishter puts his words into your mouth. His words, mamish, it's him speaking through your mouth. That's a summary of the Maamar in Torah. Torah and mitzvah's difference is, mitzvahs you're an eved, Torah you're the Melech himself. And that's hinted in that when you have bittul, you could actually become or hamshacha of Chachmei Ilah. What does the Rebbe want from all this? And again, we'll get back to R99 in a second. Yud Aleph, hine mehabir b'Torah. Sha'bitul de Yira shu kli l'chachmei ilah nikras megurei aviv. Notice the choice of pasuk upon which this vart was set. The bir in Torah is that the bittul of Yira is a kli t'chachmei ilah, and that bittul is called megurei aviv, fearing the father. Hainash kadosh baruch hu nikra kan le b'te'ar adin ki b'te'ar av. Uklashon Rav Magid also shemegurei aviv yiras aviv shebashamayim. Move on mizeh, the word aviv tells us shebitul zehu leya bitul de eved kima bitul de ben, the bitul which is creating the state of consciousness that allows for the hamshacha of aviv, the hamshacha of dvaravai zu alacha, is a bitul of being a ben, treating the Eibishter as your father. By de bitul zed de ben dvaravai zu alacha he haniglis by v'yem de beresh techgrene. So that's the Rebbe's mucker, that it's the Avodah of Ben. Now the Rebbe gives a short hasbara. Ki ba'avodah de bechinas ben, efsher li is bittul amiti betachlis, she'enu mitzias la'atzmei klal, v'chol mitzusay mitzias hav. Because in Eved, no matter how deep you go with Eved, you always remain something separate. Only in the Avodah of Ben can you become truly, truly. See, interesting, in the in Sifches, when it was the Avodah of Eved, the Lashon is bittul betachlis. Here with the Ben, it becomes bittul amiti betachlis. Same thing. Eine mitzias la'atzmai. Over here in Sifches, eine mitzias la'atzmai. And here it's eine mitzias la'atzmai klal. Even though the word klal already is in Sifches in one of the places. But later on, when the Rebbe uses the word eved, that's where he uses the word eine mitzias la'atzmai, not klal. Only by a Ben you say eine mitzias la'atzmai klal. Chol mitzusay mitzias hav. And again, each time it's another shlav. When it comes to the eved, tainu go adin, tainu go eved. Even though the Rebbe says, but the uptouch of that is tainu go adin and tainu go eved. Here it's kol mitzvah. Your entire mitzvah becomes the mitzvah of the Father. This ben is an avodah. It's not a physical reality. The physical reality of ben always is separate. When the neshamas are called banim, it's not like a ben in this world. Even though you come from the meich of the Father, the primus of the Father, but you get separated from him afterwards. You got to return your own avodah first. No, ben means it's totally one. It never gets separated. Not only in the avodah of ben can you be a bittul amiti betachlis, but it's actually a higher avodah than bittul of evet. The yiseda mizeh, and even higher the truth is not just the ben kanal me'atereir shayidei yisak atera bebitul leike eved amekayim mitzvah hamelech elahu hamelech atzmei. When you have this bittul that's higher than the bittul of eved, you can actually become the melech himself. Sounds like even higher than ben. Kol mitzvah mitzias av is still mitzvah. The highest level is hu hamelech atzmei. It's interesting, Hara 104, just to go back, in Sif Yud, Chachmei Ilah Nikras Aviv, Al Pi Yodua Shavram Ubchinas Chachmei Ilah, Ish Lekasha Zegam Pirush HaPashat Shemaguri Aviv Koyal Aviv Shel Yaakov. In literal context, Aviv means Yitzchak. Yaakov dwelled in the land of Yitzchak, his father. There's a Maamar in Torah that says that Avram is Chachmei Ilah. So here we could say that it's referring to Avram. Not the Yitzchak, his literal father, but Avram is also Kigam Avram, Nikra Aviv Shel Yaakov, Moshe Amar Yaakov, Elokei Avi, Elokei Avram. V'ulei Yesh Leimar, the Blashon HaTorah, the Chachmei Ilah, Nikras Aviv, that quote from the Pnim, V'lei Nikra Av, but Aviv, Merumaz Gam, Chachmei Ilah, Nikras Aviv, the Yaakov, again in the literal sense. And the Alter Rebbe over there is already coming to link the Chassidish pshat with the literal pshat. Let's go back to R99. It's not related to the guf of the Maamar. The Rebbe just says that this nekuda of Megure meaning Yira and meaning Eitzer was already said by the Maggid. And the question R99 is, why didn't the Alter Rebbe say B'Shem Oimrei? And we learned the Maamar last time, Padav Shalom Lamed Ches, the Rebbe over there, in short, addressed that nekuda when it came to the other Torah of Dam Alamayla Mimoch. Here the Rebbe is addressing the same nekuda when it comes to the Torah of Megure Lashon Yira, Megure Lashon Eitzer. And here's much more barichus. Why didn't Alter Rebbe write it B'Shem Oimrei? Yesh Leimar, first of all, we can say the Maggid isn't the source. Should have Pirush Rashi? Vayidana. It's already in Rashi, the two Pirushim. We saw in 95. The Yesh Nidali or Nidaleimar came at Shekenu Bekama Bekama and Yonim Betanya V'Shar Svarov. There's a better answer, and the better answer is better because this is an answer for this question. Happens to be punct over here. Rashi says it. But what are you going to do with many things in Tanya? Many things not that have other svarim that are also can be found in Teras HaMaggid and they aren't mentioned in his name. We already find this phenomenon by other Gedei Yisrael. And the greatest of them all would be Rabbi Lezer HaGadol. He never mentioned, mostly never mentioned the names of his teachers, even though he's credited with being the type of person who never said anything outside of what he heard from his teachers. So you would expect that everything he should quote the name of his teachers. And the explanation can be said in two ways. First of all, Aleph, al derech she'amar Rabbi Yechanan, Gemara says in Yevamis, Talmidcha Yoshev v'deiresh stam v'hakol yedim kishelchahi. Your student just sits there and darshans. Everybody knows it's your Torah. So al derech zeh by Rabbi Agadol, because he never said anything in his not from his teachers, so everybody knew that bistam he was quoting his teachers. And the same can be applied to bifrat benegel marazakin. Shekasav ba'ashar shel sefer Tanya. Bepratis yeser b'agdamasi l'Tanya shu Melukat b'pisfarim b'pisefrim te'she'alin nishmasam eden. He already let you know as a headline that everything I'm saying here is gathered from the words of Sfarim and Seifrim. And in the Tanya's headline, he lets you know about the entirety of his writings, entirety of his works. Since, as we know, Tanya is the foundation, and Teresh B'Ksav is the whole Chassidus Chabad. Ubemelo, whatever it says in Tanya applies to all of Chassidus. And since the Alter Rebbe gives a disclaimer at the beginning of the Tanya that everything he says belongs to his teachers, so obviously, when he's Deiresh Stam, it comes from his teachers. Beis Kim and Zagin Tifer la'achre shasham azamir abaysav he sigzeh b'sichleihu, higher level. He grasped it with his own seichel. Ba'achin ikras al shmei, and therefore it can be called by his name. The Yisayim Mizet Torah say can be called his Torah. Actually, not just justifying why it was possible not to mention B'Shem Imre. Actually, you shouldn't. Because in the end of the day, when he says it, he's saying because of his own conviction. Not because he received it from some tradition. As they versteht And again here, the Rebbe says, the first answer was also Bifrat ben Negel Marazakin. Second answer also, Bifrat ben Negel Marazakin. Which means that everything was new by him. Whatever you heard from his teachers, by infusing them with Chabad, they came to a new light. There's a new element to it. That's why the Alter Rebbe doesn't say B'Shem Imre. But back to our Nekuda. The Rebbe brings from the Maamar of the Alter Rebbe that we're talking about not just the Aveda of Eve, but also the Aveda of Ben. The Aveda of Ben is the bittul which is required to get the Hamshach of Shalom Rav. And with this, the Rebbe kind of concludes the Maamar and translates it back to the pasuk of Shalom Rav itself. That's the continuum, that's the flow here of the psukim. First you begin with V'chol B'nayich. Talmid Chachamim or Aboinim Esa Olam Marbim Shalom Ba'olam. What is their Aveda? Hikpira Shel Rav Magid Ala Pasuk V'Yeshiv Yankov Beretz Mguri Aviv showing in Aveda D'Bchinas Banim Kanal Leger V'Lesef Hanitzeitzes Hakadeshim Ulachnisam Ulahaleisam Le'elu. Their Aveda is to gather in all the holy sparks and bring them, elevate them higher, which is the Aveda of Banim. There's a business operation happening over here. The point of the neshama coming down to this world is to get merchandise, to make some transaction in this world. Which is which is again the bundling, the Aveda of Birur and Nitzutzes. And by doing the Aveda of Megurei Aviv, Vayidei Zeh Vayeshev Yankev, Bikesh Yankev Leishev B'Shalva Inyan HaShalom. That Aveda brings Vayeshev, brings Shalom. At least in Bikesh Yankev Leishev, even though the Rebbe in Ara 110 says L'hoyer Shebein Rugza Shal Dina V'Rugza Shal Yosef Yashav B'Shalva. There actually was a time when he did sit in Shalva. In this moment, at the beginning of Parshas Vayeishev, he actually was in Shalva before Rugza Shal Yosef came along. And Rebbe's Mitzayim to the Sichos in Chilek Lamed. Fascinating Sicha, because Yaakov Leishev B'Shalva, that tzaddik, that's what he wants. His Aveda is Leishev B'Shalva, Ayin Sham. Al Kol Panim, you get Vayeshev Yaakov Inyan HaShalom, and you get Shalom on all the levels. Hein HaShalom Ba'ilam, first of all, Shalom in Welt. K'mei Merazal, Talmid Chacham, Maram Shalom Ba'ilam. Hein Shalom, Talmid Chacham Matzmam, K'mei Shemamshich, Shalom Rav Le'eves Erasach. And then you get the Shalom to be experienced on your own. Ki Kei V'Talmid Chacham. Because these Chachamim who are doing the Aveda Banim are in a level of Tachas Abitul, therefore the Nachas Ruach that the Eibishter experiences from Marbim Shalom Ba'ilam comes to also to Talmid Chachamim. On account of them being oyave, on account of them doing the avodah out of love. And the love is to only create, that's all they want, is to create nachas ruach to the Eibishter. And they know that whatever they're going to get is bein areich. That bittul which removes themselves totally from the picture, they actually indeed do get begilui, to experience the nachas ruach of the Eibishter himself. The kevan she'enu mitzias la'atzmam klal, harei tainug da'abedi or tainug shalahem, because they aren't a mitzias for zich, so the tainug of the Eibishter becomes their tainug. It's fascinating. There's no, classically the Rebbe always finishes off with a wish for Mashiach, something like that. Nothing of that over here. It just comes down to them. But it's very moving. Why not? Because this is Mashiach. Is the Rebbe Tachteinu. And then the nachas ruach da'abedi that comes from the Rebbe Tachteinu should come down to the Yidden. That's the ultimate level of Mashiach. So I said in the beginning of the last year that I think here you see a remes to the nekuda of the Rebbe Tachteinu not being the be-all end-all. There's more after the Rebbe Tachteinu. The lashon of the famous Sikha in Chilek Tazai in Pkudei, where the Rebbe says, I'm not saying it's the same exact nekuda, but the Rebbe says over here that their pnimiyus ha'inyan from their dira le'yizbarich is davka ladur v'lishka min hashamas Yisrael. It's not so much the Rebbe Tachteinu, it's more dira b'Yisrael. B'balas Yisrael kutchabrichu kul echad, we are the real proper residents for the Eibishter. Mashenkin dir b'tachtenim in b'negiat zu Welt is bloß das, was es wird erhört in Welt, as your ganze Metzius is norm tzad ha'atzmos, etc. In other words, the dir b'tachtenim is that Welt erhers who it really is. But not that it on its own account is a fitting dir for the Eibishter. We are the fitting dir for the Eibishter. Elamai, through our avodah, we do elam hazat tacht, and we make from the dvarim gashmi a klita likus. So then that brings it out begilui. And the Sifei with that Rebbe says, then vert ufketan begoli. As the Yidden then adir liyizbarich, when do we actually see that we become a true dira, totally miyuchad? Is as dafkev and oich di agbolo medida from tachtenim is nitkein meniya. When we can get this tachtenim out of the way, when we can prove that even here we can be a dira, then we truly are a dira. Again, not saying it's the same nekuda, but here you see also there's more to dira b'tachtenim than meets the eye. And same thing over here. Dira b'tachtenim is one level. You're ma'abim shalom ba'ilam, fine. But then at the greatest level, you get something higher than that. The Chacham who made the dira, who made the nachas ruach, get to experience that nachas ruach of the Bari himself. Kein tiyalanu b'bias b'shef tzidkenu. Amen v'chein yiratzin.